Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, February 19th. This is Hanover Owen Sound Task Force meeting. Welcome to everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. Is there a declaration of interest, anyone? Seeing none, if one arises, you can speak up as we move along. Number 3, review of work to date. Randy, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Chair O'Leary, and good morning, everyone. So there were 2 meetings in January. The first meeting was on January 11th. That focused on policing perspectives. We had presentations from Owen Sound Police Chief Ambrose and from Chief Knoll from Hanover Police. We've summarized the potential recommendations and opportunities from that meeting. That starts at page 25 of the recommendations and opportunities document. So just to highlight some of the recommendations and opportunities from the January 11th Police Services meeting. In terms of policing challenges in Owen Sound, it was noted that there is a significant population increase during the daytime hours in Owen Sound, as the city is a regional economic hub. And it's estimated that the daytime population is just over 40,000 in 2016. It was also noted that many of the social services have been centralized in the city to support those in need. Some of the key factors that tend to drive service calls, it was noted that homelessness, mental health, and addictions were some of the top 3 key factors that drive service calls. It was noted that the annual average time spent addressing mental health calls is significantly greater in comparison to time spent on assault calls. It was also noted that low staffing levels to address high call volumes, noting budget constraints. They also noted that the courthouse in Owen Sound serves people from the surrounding area throughout Grey Bruce, but that Owen Sound incurs the security costs for this service. Overall, it was noted that there is a high crime severity index in Owen Sound. And some of the opportunities from the discussion, one was, could the funding for the security services of the court be sustained at the regional level, or are there opportunities for some funding support? There was also discussion around other models to look at when dealing with mental health calls and the importance of continuing with the mobile mental health addictions response team in partnership with the Canadian Mental Health Association. And are there additional areas to partner with CMHA with respect to mental health? Can paramedic services play a role in supporting these types of calls? Could potentially look at having mental health workers employed through the 911 dispatch call centers. And I think that's something that was being explored already, such that if a mental health related call comes in, the professional can take over the call. In terms of some of the policing challenges that was noted by Town of Hanover, they also noted that there's a significant population increase during the day, as Hanover is similar in that it acts as a regional hub for things like jobs, services, and other amenities. With the daily regional draw estimated between 40,000 to 45,000 people per day. They also noted that 50 to 60% of Hanover's work involves non-residents. They also noted that there's a high call and charge volume compared to provincial and national average, with the based on the number of criminal charges per officer in 2018. This was double the provincial average and close to double the national average. So there is a high crime severity index. The per capita for police service costs is about $350 per capita for Hanover. In terms of some of the opportunities, it was noted that it'd be worth reviewing and connecting with other police jurisdictions for either resource sharing or for sharing of best practices. Shelburne was noted as having a gold standard when it comes to overall crime statistics, and learning what they have implemented to address their crime rates may be beneficial. Based on the discussions, some of the things were, can the budget contributions focus on preventative care versus reactive care when it comes to mental health challenges? This could entail further investments in mental health and addiction services, education, and healthcare. And there was a notion that generally, if we focus on the social determinants of health when it comes to providing services, this may lessen the burden on police services overall. It was noted that the work done as part of the community safety and well-being plan is very important, and it will be important to implement the recommendations and finding from that work to address some of the challenges that were discussed. In terms of the further research requested, and I think we started talking about this at the meeting in terms of the per capita cost for Owen Sound Police Services. I haven't heard back from Owen Sound Police Services, but I did do a quick calculation this morning based on Owen Sound's 2021 budget. Looks like about 7.8 million for police services. I think Chief Ambrose on the call during the meeting estimated around 8 million. With approximate population of 22,000. So that comes in about $355 per capita for Owen Sound Police, which is very similar to Hanover. There was also clarification on how student populations are typically accounted for in these statistics. We haven't had a chance to look into that, but we will as part of the final report. On the January 15th meeting, so that was the second meeting that was held, and that focused on planning and development with presentations from Grey County planning staff, presentations from Pam Coulter and Amy Can from the City of Owen Sound, as well as from Don Tedford from the Town of Hanover. On the Grey County planning and development side, we provided an update with respect to some of the preliminary results from the growth management study update, which shows that there has been a significant increase in population growth from 2016, and that's anticipated to continue over the next 25 plus years. The growth management study also noted a migration from the greater Golden Horseshoe, as well as a consistent aging population. Potential development constraints were noted, including more complex approval process, land and construction price increases, labor pool shortages, building supply shortages, lack of infrastructure to support development, that the overall demand is just outpacing supply in the housing market, and that the average house price in the county continues to increase, making it more difficult for people to enter into the housing market. It was noted that incentive programs could help offset or assist builders with affordable and attainable housing initiatives, and some of the programs are being offered through the community improvement plans, as well as things like development charge exemptions for nonprofit housing, rental housing, and additional dwelling units. In terms of opportunities, reviewing the current approval process, looking for those opportunities to further streamline, as well as ensuring a consistent process across the county is something that is currently being explored. It was also noted that we've implemented online and digital application submissions, which has benefited both county staff as well as developers. We've also implemented electronic public meetings, and we want to explore keeping that option going forward post-pandemic, as we find that there's huge benefits of having the electronic public meetings. We also want to promote the incentives that are available to encourage the types of development that council's looking to attract in our communities. On the Owen Sound planning and development side, so Owen Sound planning staff provide a snapshot of development and construction activity that occurred in the city last year, which included 204 building permits, a construction value of just over $66 million. They noted they saw close to 23,000 visitors to their recreational areas, 33 new business licenses issued, and 13 changes of ownership or location for existing businesses. Nearly 700,000 was collected in building permit fees in 2020, and 119 new residential units were also constructed. It was noted that there is an overarching need for affordable housing in Owen Sound. It was noted that the median income in Owen Sound is just over $51,000, with 16% of homeowners and 49% of renters spending more than 30% of their income on shelter costs. In terms of opportunities, emphasizing an environmental lens on planning decisions countywide is important. And it was noted that the county's pending climate change action plan may help inform next steps and best practices. Looking at urban growth standards and applying similar standards with a focus on complete communities throughout the county. And then they also noted a major road greening initiative being planned along 3rd Avenue East, and that's a county road within the city of Owen Sound. On the Hanover planning and development side, Hanover staff noted that there was 36 million in building development in 2020, which is the highest it's been in 25 years. They noted 60 new dwellings in 2020, which is an increase from 2019, which had 23 new dwellings. They also noted that they have started a growth study, which will support a future official plan amendment for their special policy areas. And they noted that a good portion of their special policy areas are currently undevelopable. And therefore, it was noted that landmass constraints represents the biggest hurdle for Hanover, in that Hanover lacks large developable commercial lands. Hanover staff also expressed that the minimum development density in the county official plan for primary settlement areas is challenging to uphold for each individual development. And they recommend that the standard should be viewed as an average requirement for all subdivision development in the town. In terms of opportunities, completing the growth study and identifying lands that may be suitable for development is key. And Hanover staff noted that this could entail land annexation. And then reviewing the density policies as part of a future county housekeeping amendment that we're planning in 2021. In terms of further research requested, it was noted that there's a high proportion of residents in Owen Sound renting in comparison to other areas throughout the county. And whether or not that's posing a problem, what are the impacts on a city with a high rental population, possibility to look at percent of renters across the settlement areas in the county, and that it may also be worthwhile looking at other communities, both big and small, outside of Grey County in comparison. We haven't had a chance to explore this further, but this is something we can investigate as part of the final report. And that's an overview of those two meetings in January.
Great, thanks, Randy. Any questions from committee members? Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that report summary, Randy. And I just wondered, I know that annexation is quite a sensitive word. I wonder if in your report changed to boundary adjustments. I just wondered if that's a softer word. I know it's very sensitive. And I only feel that is just a suggestion, that's all.
Sure, yeah, we're happy to make that adjustment. Ultimately, there's a multitude of options in terms of trying to address and how we manage our growth for our settlement areas and our communities. So yeah, we're happy to add in that additional wording for sure.
Yeah, just to soften it up a little bit. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Buck.
So putting on my Hanover hat for a second, I would probably say that the word annexation is probably necessary. Putting on the county hat, softening the language as it pertains to possibilities for cooperation, sure. So I would say put both.
I think that's a good point. I don't think you never go wrong just calling a spade a spade. Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Brian.
I was just thinking, I guess you could say annexation if necessary, but not necessarily annexation, to sort of semi-quote another famous person.
Okay, thank you for that. Paul?
And that's part of, I think Brian hit the nail on the head. Annexation is sort of your last I guess last card on your deck sort of thing. It's always nice if you can work forward and work on that boundary adjustment. And I know it's I think throughout the county there's other areas. I think Randy, you speak to it about boundary adjustments. I think you got a report coming back as well separately and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't disagree with the comments. It's just if you can negotiate something first versus annexation, then annexation is your final approach. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Randy.
Further to that, so we are planning to bring that report back based on some of the research that we've looked at in terms of other areas, in terms of developing and what they've looked at of we're calling those win-win situations in terms of looking for how to be able to deal with these situations and matters. So yeah, we're hoping it'll probably be the second meeting in March, committee of the whole meeting, but we are working towards bringing that forward to council.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Kim.
I think too, just to close a loop on this a little bit, the summaries that Randy provides of each of the meetings, this is all going to be like looked at as a whole, and then we'll come back with a final report that has recommendations. So certainly I wouldn't want anybody to be unnecessarily alarmed that like every detail in each one of these summaries is going to appear in the final report, because that's not the case. And certainly this committee will have an opportunity to look at those summary recommendations before they go any further.
Okay, thanks, Kim, and thanks, Randy, for that wrap up. Let's move on to item number 4. I'm happy to introduce Director of Public Works and Engineering, City of Owen Sound, Dennis Kafalis, and he has a presentation on opportunities and challenges within the city transit. Good morning, Dennis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everybody for having me, and good morning to everybody. I guess I will see if this will actually work. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
Great, thanks. Anyways, this morning's presentation will be regarding our transportation system, or more specific, our transit systems that the city provides. Big thing is we do have a pretty extensive transportation system within the city. We have four primary routes as part of our transit system. It covers, as you can see, it covers most of the city and provides a very good level of service. The 4 routes consist of the core route, the Brook route, East Bayshore, Crosstown. We have 157 stops. We have 48 stops equipped with shelters. Our fares range from monthly passes from $35 a month to $70 a month, and a $55 a month pass for seniors. The standard, like the one-offs, are $2.50 for one ride and $3 for adults. We operate roughly 12 hours a day from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, with the last buses leaving the terminus or the transit center shelter at 6 p.m. Saturday, we run from 9 to 4, with the last bus leaving the transit shelter at 4 p.m. The Brook route covers the northwest quadrant, starts and ends at the terminal every day. Last year, in a COVID year, we had approximately 35,000 riders on this route. The core route serves the main core of the city, and again, it starts and ends at the terminal. There we had about 34,000 ridership in 2020 during a COVID year. One of the things that we had to do during COVID was actually limit the ridership on the buses to about 5 or 6 riders. During the most stringent times, we've upped that to 10 riders. The buses, initially when we started, we actually had this poly installed to help protect the driver and separate them from the passengers getting on and off the bus. Given our location, I'll speak to it a little bit later on in the presentation in terms of challenges with our equipment. Given our topography, the shorter buses actually work much better than the larger buses. We found the larger buses in the past would be blowing transmissions and brakes trying to go up and down the hills so frequently. But the thing about larger buses is that you'll find in the other jurisdictions during COVID, they were actually having the passengers enter from the rear doors. That wasn't an option for the city of Owen Sound and our provider, which is First Student. So initially, like I said, we installed these plastic barriers to help, polyplastic barriers to protect the drivers. Right now, we've actually gone to a more permanent plexiglass dividers. So the drivers are much more appreciative of that. And that's how we'll proceed for, it might become the norm. It's hard to say. We have the Crosstown route. Again, it's probably our least used route, but it does provide a service. Again, we had about 22,000 riders last year. And the last route is the East Bayshore route. It's our most popular route because it does stop at the hospital and the Walmart, which is a lot of frequent users for Walmart. And again, what we found is that This is one of the routes when we started limiting the number of riders, that we were actually leaving some riders at the bus stop because we couldn't actually accommodate them because we had reached our capacity on the buses. So in terms of usership and ridership, from year to year, from 2016 to 2019, we were averaging anywhere between 190,000 to 200,000 riders a year. Last year, we were about 136,000 total, so we were down about 60,000 riders. So as part of COVID, what we found is that we were able to obtain some funding from the Safe Restart Fund, which helped that we were allowed to attribute to our transit system. So what we did is we created a temporary route that started a couple of weeks ago and will run to the end of March. And it's a midtown route, and it does include Walmart and Hospital, two of our most popular stops. And we have found that we don't have the ridership numbers yet because it hasn't been running that long. Well, we do find it really helps, and it alleviates the demand on the East Bayshore route, which means that we're not leaving people behind in the bus stops, and then we can accommodate our demand and our riders. We do have a mobility transit service. Again, same thing. We have to run from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the week, and the same on the weekends. Again, it's a door-to-door service. So if you need it, you phone up. It'll come pick you up. It'll drop you off. And again, we hope that people here, you have to be a little more proactive to make sure if you needed to get to work or get to your appointments, that as soon as you know that you have an appointment set up, that you contact our provider, and then they can schedule your trips to make sure they can accommodate all your passengers or all your trips, and to make sure you're not left behind. And it's a tough one because you do have peak times and non-peak times. So we have one bus running at any given time. So there is demand for it, but it is a costly service. We also started up the intercommunity transit, our Guelph to Owen Sounds, as we call Ghost. It's actually funded by the up until March 2023 from the province. It provides a service that was once provided by Greyhound, but again, I don't believe the demand or the business case was there, so they actually stopped the service. We started it up. We've got the stops as indicated: Chatsworth, Williamsford, Durham, Mount Forest, Arthur, Fergus, and Laura before arriving in Guelph. The fares will vary on this. A full fare will be $20, but then we do have zones associated with. So for say you're leaving Owen Sound, you go to Chatsworth and Williamsford, it only costs you $5. The Durham will be $10. Mount Forest and Arthur will be $15. Fergus and the Laura will be $20 as well. So it starts off at about 7:30 in the morning. It's about a 2-hour and 15-minute trip by the time you get to Guelph. And we timed this so that you could actually tie into the Go Transit and any other services that are provided in Guelph. So it has been somewhat popular since we started up from August to December. We had about 700 passengers, so about 175 riders per month. January we had 152, so it was a bit down in terms of which we anticipated given that we were in a lockdown. It's hard to judge how well the service may be operating if it wasn't COVID. We know that if the bus we have numbers and we're cracking numbers to see what it would take to develop a business case, because at the end of the term of the contract in March of 2023, we will reevaluate and to see if there is a business case. I'm not sure, I can't speak for our council, but in my opinion, I don't believe we would be prepared to subsidize another bus service unless it paid for itself. And we know that if we did fill up the bus on every trip, we'd actually be making money given the size of the bus. But from the feedback we received from the riders, they're very happy with the service. It is a good service. We do have a good provider, and people are using it. So it is filling up a pent-up demand.
Dennis,
on its own. Sorry. Yep.
can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
What do you think or do we have any idea what the impact is of of COVID and the university being in Guelph being kind of shut down? I just happened to notice at the end of the family day weekend, like the trip going back to Guelph on
Yes.
that, was that a Sunday or Monday night? Anyway, the bus was packed.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting that people, people that want to go back and forth that way.
Yeah, and that's something, Kim, that it's hard to judge whether,
Yeah.
like we were hoping, just talking beforehand and before COVID started, we thought it'd be a very popular trip, like our service. But given with COVID, again, like we probably had
So,
times and we were
yeah.
hoping that we'd see more ridership than we've experienced.
Yeah.
We're happy that people are using it, and yeah, so it's hard to judge. COVID has really put an impact on
Yeah.
on us being able to evaluate how well the service is being received.
Yeah.
I know beforehand we were getting numerous calls. When are you going to start? When are you going to start? We had that other provider. I'm not going to mention
Yes.
the name. He's no longer doing it. But we have a fully accessible bus. He didn't. We have a much more comfortable bus, and people aren't packed in there. Our provider is has a reputation, a good reputation. It's something that hopefully we get back to normal towards the end of the year, and maybe we can get a full year of data to be able to properly evaluate the service.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to say that our taxpayers are going to subsidize another bus service. It is a needed service. I mean, if the province is willing to help out, it would be great to continue going.
Yeah.
So, and again, we want more and more people, especially when we talk about dealing with climate change.
Yeah.
More and more people using a service as opposed to having cars on the road. It really helps, and you'll find, like even, I always said this. I mean, I'm not going to pick on planners, Randy, but is there a well-planned city in Canada? And you're probably going to say no. But if you talked about 1920s and you talk about Toronto was a well-planned city, and they were building it so you had hubs, and you had these hubs tied by transit services so that you could go to leave where you're living and make it downtown Toronto. Was all developed as hubs. And you can see it was a well-planned city, and it was just urban sprawl. Just how do you deal with that? But transit systems help alleviate that sprawl. They help alleviate traffic on the roads. It's just getting people, to change their habits to use these systems. So this would be an ideal system that would leave Owen Sound, arrive in Guelph, and then you have all the other transit systems available to you to make it to other parts of the province. So I guess I talked this one to death, but we were pretty excited when we started up the system, when we finally were able to start up the system, and happy with the service so far. So our challenges. The biggest challenge is the cost to provide this service. The net cost to the city of Owen Sound is probably, and our taxpayers, is probably $1 million. That's just for the conventional system. Or no, sorry, all systems altogether. So that's what our taxpayers have to cover. When we talk about the overall cost, we're looking at about $1.3 million. In terms of fares, we gather, or we collect about $320,000, which makes up about 25% of our overall cost. For a community of our size, ideally you want to be in the 30 to 35% range in terms of recovery. I mean, that is just an industry standard. So we are a bit below that. In order for us to achieve that, we would have to probably have about 220,000 riders on an annual basis, which means increasing it, on average, if you won't take out COVID, about 21,500 riders on an annual basis. In terms of mobility transit, same thing. It's about a $300,000 cost. We collect about 17,500 in revenues from fares, which is about 6%. And that falls within the ballpark of what you can expect for a mobility service in a community of our size, which should be somewhere between 5 and 10%. It's a system that we must provide, and it is well received. One of the biggest challenges we'll have is as we start developing, especially up the hill in the Sydenham area, is expanding our system. We will have to provide a service up in those areas, or at least have access to a service for potential as those areas fill out and build up. And another major challenge is we have no major concentrated business area. You'll find in a lot of communities to say that they have, I'm not saying more office building type of infrastructure. So you have these different cores where you would actually have more people commuting on the bus and more people using the bus. And we really don't have that in Owen Sound. And hopefully we can, as we develop the industrial area, maybe we'll have more businesses where we'll have a lot of high employers, and hopefully we can increase our ridership that way. Constraints, it's really a service delivery model. Current hours of operation do not meet all of our demands of our users. For instance, up on 16th Street, we have a lot of the fast food restaurants. We have a lot of stores that are open late, but we don't have our transit services actually stops. You know, the last run leaves the terminal 6 p.m. So when those people finish work, they have no means of getting home other than taking a taxi or having their own car. And again, we're not talking about the highest paying jobs in Owen Sound. So if we had a transit service that could actually have the last run, say at 9:30, it would help those people who are leaving work. Our equipment, you know, given our topography, we find these shorter buses work extremely well. The bigger buses, we could provide more seating capacity on larger buses, but then they'll break down more often and be off the road. So that means you need more backup buses. You need to make sure you have mechanics available to fix them. And again, the topography leads to the equipment we've chosen. So it's really, you know, it's hard to get the perfect model given the constraints we had. If we ever lived in an area that was completely flat, you could put the buses, you know, larger buses on the routes when you needed to, and it would be a lot easier to provide those services. So these are the challenges that we have when we talk about delivering a transit system to Owen Sound. We know we need to. We have a lot of people in our community that need our transit system, and it does help them. I mean, it's, you know, one of our biggest employers is a hospital. The thing is, though, a lot of, you know, given our areas and given what's available to people in terms of where they want to live, you'll find a lot of people will commute and use their vehicles, and that makes sense because when you've got doctors and nurses, and I mean, you want to live what I say out in the country. You want a larger spread in terms of where you're living, because you'll probably tend to have more toys. So you tend to pick where you want to live. So you'll find that it'll be hard to have the hospital being a big generate a lot of ridership on the buses, as opposed to having areas where you'd have a lot of you know, factories, or not factories, but, you know, manufacturing, that sort of thing. High businesses that employ a lot of employees, so that they would be more of a commuting type of scenario. You know, in terms of opportunity.
Sorry.
Yep.
I do see Councillor Millen has his hand up.
Okay, sorry.
Well, that's okay. Thank you. And my question related to a couple slides ago regarding your challenges, and one of them was the cost, of course. And I'm wondering, you know, you say there the conventional fares recover 25% of the overall costs. If you were to charge true cost recovery for the transit system, how would that compare to personal transportation, i.e. a car, pickup, whatever? You know, we have a number of strategies to try to direct people and get them to use transit. But at the end of the day, it's going to be convenience and cost. And if we can't meet either one of those, I just don't see how it's going to work without taxpayer money. So I just wondered if you could maybe comment on that, those thoughts.
Yeah, and that's what you'll see, like in a smaller community, you'll never be able to recover your costs. It would be cost prohibitive for you to use the bus. When we talk about a large, say Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, the ridership is so high that you're able to cover your costs through providing a rate that is affordable. You know, we would be talking about, I can crunch the numbers and say it's 200,000 divided by 1.2 million. I think it works out to be I don't know, I can do the calculation, but I mean, in the past, when we used to do this, we used to say to ride, your fares in a smaller community of our size would be somewhere in the $20 to $25 per ride. And it's really, in our community, it's for people who probably can't afford a vehicle. So it's hard to make that relationship saying, okay, well, I'm not going to use my vehicle, I'm going to ride the bus. And what would that cost me if I took into account that I am saying my monthly payment on my truck would be, say, $1,000. My insurance would be, let's say, God, what would that come? Probably another $300 type of thing. Yeah, what would it be worth for me to take the bus to and from work every day and not have a vehicle? Yeah, we can make that case, but you'll never find in a community of our size that we'll ever be able to fully recover our fares. You know, they're
So
always.
Dennis, just to Brian's point, like, I think that goes back to, you know, the amount of money that people are making in the city of Owen Sound is, it's just so much lower. And I think that all ties into it. Like, there's like the people that are the people that are using our transit system, they just, I mean, if you ever start talking about raising the fares, they just don't have the money. So I don't think that it is doable, but that's just my opinion.
No,
Well, and
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I guess if I could, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we should do that, but I'm just wondering, you know, to give everybody a clear line of sight as to the challenges that are here, and to be fair to the taxpayer as a whole, you know, what the cost is. And certainly there are benefits to the community, to allowing people to get to employment or whatever if they can't afford a car. You know, there's a value to that. I don't know how you put the value on that, but there is a value. And so I guess what always intrigues me is we say, well, you know, it's going to cost the taxpayers money. Well, that's fine, but what is the true cost to the community? And nobody ever really wants to talk about that. And anyway, it is what it is. And I don't disagree with you, Dennis. In a small community like Owen Sound, or indeed anywhere in Grey Bruce, we're never going to get true cost recovery because it would be cost prohibitive for sure. But I think it is a good exercise to see what is the true cost of this thing overall. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, that's something we can look at, saying what the value is and saying, because there is a value to the service, especially for
Sure.
those who don't have the means to purchase a vehicle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think what we can do is, you know, depending how this year it goes, who knows, we can try and look at something like that and say, here, put a value to it. It's a very tough of all the, when we talk about user pay systems, it's so much easier to do with facilities, for solid waste, water, sewer. You know, it's easier to come up with a user pay system just because the volumes are there and it's not cost prohibitive when you do it. So transit is always it's a very hard service to provide in a smaller community.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, this conversation has prompted a few more questions. So
Okay.
I have Councillor McQueen, Warden Hicks, and CAO Wingrove.
Right on. It's hard for me to see any hands rising up here. I can only see so many people on my side here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And just to follow up more on Dennis, or maybe somebody else on this meeting could answer this, but with regards to Stats Canada, and I know we can only go back to 16, and I know they're going to do a census this coming year, but do you have numbers that state countywide versus Owen Sound, or even in Hanover, of households with vehicles? Are you able to drive down? Is that available? So basically the average residential home in Owen Sound maybe has 0.75 cars per household, where maybe Grey County, well, because it's rural, maybe it has 2.5 cars. And the reason I raise that is, does that help Owen Sound or even Hanover make the case in the sense through funding or other funding that, look, you have a population that is, that necessarily doesn't have the access or the affordability of vehicles. Since that we do need offset funding to provide that service in more of a broad base role. Any thoughts on that?
I personally don't have any thoughts on that. I mean, or in terms of, I'm not sure. I don't have the data in terms of number of vehicles on average per household. I can say though that we do attribute about $255,000 of provincial gas tax rebate towards this system. And I mean, and it has opened up over the years in terms of what you can use your gas tax for. Would it help if there was more funding available through gas tax to help subsidize these systems in smaller communities like ourselves, where we know we can only generate so much revenue through fares? That is something that would really help. And I know the federal government is dishing out more money. Maybe I can use a better terminology than that, for directly to be attributed to transit services, whether it's for capital costs. I'm not 100% sure. Kate would probably be able to help me out on that one for sure. But
So,
yeah, sorry.
So maybe to take that one more step, as we move forward with climate change and green initiatives and that, would it be fair to say that, you know, with the, you know, movement to other sources of travel and stuff like that, that also could be an opportunity to seek, if there are opportunities for green funding, that certainly having a transit system in place provides a service, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people have to go out and buy a gas vehicle where they, you know, can use the transit. I'm just trying to look at opportunities or ways of maybe sourcing out other revenue in the sense that, you know, where the future will be, and in the sense of transit. And I know they, you know, in the urban setting of the Greater Toronto area, they talk about transit being very important and that sort of thing. So, you know, I'm just trying to sort of have that conversation around opportunities that, you know, that maybe that could provide maybe more funding in the future on the sense of all those points.
Well, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I mean, these are initiatives that, I mean, if you think about it, transit systems could help really, the more affordable you make it, the more people will use it, the more, as you expand it and make it more available to more people, it helps reduce greenhouse gases by taking more vehicles off the road on average.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Kim next.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to make sure that I clearly understood what Councillor Milne was saying about the cost to the taxpayer, or the value proposition. Can you just help me to I just want to make sure I'm clear about that. So when you talk about what the true cost is, Brian,
I get,
where do you
guess-
want to?
Well, I guess what I'm meaning is, you know, so the tax, I mean, if we talk about an arena, for instance, I mean,
Sure.
an arena, you're never going to make money on arenas or recreation in general, typically.
Right.
But the taxpayer has a clear line of sight to what the true cost is of that service and how many people are using it and what they're paying towards the use of that facility.
Okay.
In transit, we never seem to really get around to what is this really costing the community in terms of dollars and cents, and how many people are, like, as Dennis was saying, you know, for you know, waste systems, a lot of people use it. Well, everybody uses it typically. So, yeah. You know, so the cost isn't usually part of that decision whether you're going to do it or not. But in transit, you know, we say that this is a necessary service, but is it really? And what's the cost of it?
And and I think maybe the other way to look at it is what's the value of it? And some of the research that's been done, like I know there was some fairly extensive research out, it's US based, but when they look at it that way, they looked at it more about the trips that weren't taken. What's the impact on people and society and community if people
Right.
can't get from A to B? They don't have
Exactly.
those jobs, they don't have those social connections, they, whatever else. And then there's a cost associated with those things. But
Right.
now you're casting a pretty wide net, and it's more qualitative than quantitative. So
Yes,
it's hard
exactly.
to put a number beside those things, but
It
it's
is.
worth a conversation, I think. Okay, I just wanted to be clear what you were saying, so that helps me. Thank you.
Well, and I guess just to touch a little bit
Yeah.
further is, then the taxpayer, it's easy to put dollars and cents on it, but what's, as you say, the real value to the
Mhm.
community? And
Yeah.
and I don't know how you value that, but there are some conversations starting to take place of
Right.
what the real value is.
Yeah, and some of this maybe is just about raising awareness and education, and that if we don't ever talk about the stories, the personals, like community paramedicine, when you talk to the people who use the service and the difference that it makes in their life, so like
Mhm.
other people who have never had to have that experience. Oh, okay, I gotcha. So, okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, and Buck, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question is there any jurisdiction that anyone is aware of where public transportation is actually a moneymaker?
Oh, I would say when you look at the larger ones, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, if we say here in Canada, I would say they are making money.
And yet we hear, if you take Toronto as an example, we hear talks all the time. Am I hearing it incorrectly? That there is indeed a cost to the taxpayer for operation of, say, the TTC.
Like it depends on the system. I think what they're looking at is when you pay for the system, you're paying for the system. If you're looking to expand the system, will it cover the additional capital costs? Then that's when that's where their challenges are. I know several years ago, as part of this task force from MCM, where they gathered all the transit providers from across Canada, and it didn't help that I was on the red eye before I got there, because the feds are saying, looking at Toronto and Montreal and saying, how can we help you? And those guys wouldn't answer the question, because they said, we just need more money, because they needed to expand their systems. And I think what they're running into is the capital cost associated with expanding those systems, because the demand is so high. And to start thinking just your fares are going to help recover some of those capital costs, it's probably not a business case that can be made. It's very tough. And I know that's part of this new transit funding that's coming out will help cover some of these expansion costs and capital costs. And
right. I guess, I'm sorry.
That's it. I could go on for hours, but.
The Dutch National Railway
Yes,
makes
my
a profit.
internet, I don't know that it's the greatest where I'm at, so I hope everyone can hear me. I guess you're making the point.
Yeah, and I think the big
ahead.
thing is capital, the cost to expand, and sometimes to, like a lot of them are going to light rail systems too, as a method to get people to and from the center of the business area, say to downtown, like Ottawa looked at that, the rapid rail system. Did it work there? I'm not really sure it did. So it's cost prohibitive there, possibly. But I know Toronto and Montreal, places like that, we're making money based on their systems because of the number of their users. And if you go there, you can see how packed the subways are and the buses are in the morning and the evening rush hours. And it's the same thing here. If we could fill up our buses, just
right.
Some numbers I'm looking at just quickly. Don't hold me to these numbers, but we're looking at probably $18 to $20 a trip to recover our costs based on existing ridership. So if you think you're going to work and home just using the bus twice a day, that would be $36 to $40 a day just on going to and from work, and that's not stopping off. Say you wanted to go to the grocery store afterwards. If say our system could run that long, but it's the bigger community you have, the greater chance you have of recovering your cost through fares.
You're good,
Right.
Buck?
I guess the only point that I make is, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you folks hear me? Okay.
Yes.
The point that I guess I'm trying to make is that capital costs are costs. And when you look at overall, I would dare say there's probably not a public transportation system out there that doesn't cost the public something. I don't think that anyone enters into public transportation saying, I think this is going to be a moneymaker for the community, but rather it's going to be a benefit in other ways. And that's where I think that word value that I heard come up really needs to be taken into account.
Well, in many cases, you'll find, say if we use Toronto, much easier to jump on Go Transit than it is to drive downtown. Your quality of life, the time you spend in sitting in traffic versus you can actually you're moving on transit. You're actually moving. And in some cases, in those areas, when you're spending an hour and a half going to and from work every day, it's not time well spent. I think we can all agree on that. And it's the reason why we're living here in Owen Sound, because my commute is when I'm driving is, and since I control the stoplights, like a minute and a half to and from work. So it's a good quality of life. And I think that's what public transit will do in many other larger communities. It provides you with a better quality of life because you're not stuck in traffic. And it's hard to put a value to that.
You get to look at your phone.
And not get charged.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions?
I don't see any more hands, Dennis.
So when we talk about opportunities, I think we're at the point where we're starting to have a great demand in our industrial zone, and I think as we see more employers or more companies being established that have a larger number of employees and they are living in Owen Sound, I think that's an opportunity for us to increase our ridership. When we talk about the next generation, again, we're trying to change the habits of people. And I think if we can get, if we start targeting the high school kids and post-secondary students to use transit, and hopefully that it meets their needs in sense, like jumping on a school bus gets you to school. If you jump on a transit system, how quickly can you get to your school? Is it easier to walk? It's, those are things that we have to look at. So we are conducting a transit study this year to look at different models of delivering the service, to help hopefully come up with some models that will help those individuals, like I mentioned earlier, say up on 16th Street, when there's a lot of employers up there and they are finishing work and there's no transit system available to them. And some areas you're looking at dial-a-bus, where you would actually have an area, say the industrial zone, so you're not creating a specific route, but you would have the bus go there, have one or two stops, and then it would bring them to the existing transit routes, and then they could actually transfer to another bus. So we're going to look at these models, and we have half-hour service right now. Is that too much? How many stops do we have? We have a lot of stops. I drive the streets and think, how many people are using some of these stops? So and it goes hand in hand to help reduce cost, because we have to do snow removal on those stops as well, and it's costing us anywhere between $80,000 and $90,000 a year just to do the snow removal on those stops. We contract it out. So if we reduced our stops by 15 or 10% because they're not being used, it does translate into cost. So it's people think maybe it's not a lot, like if it's $8,000 or $10,000, but it all starts adding up when if you can start seeing these little savings, they will add up and help reduce the overall cost. So there are good people out there in terms of the transit gurus, and I think we able to line one up to help us out, to help at least develop some models that we can approach council with and say, here it is, and have that good discussion with council to say, this will provide a better level of service, hopefully for the same amount of money or less or something to that effect, and then move forward with our next contract in our transit system. So it's challenges but there is opportunities, and as we're moving forward with climate change, I think it's something that we can take advantage of. And that's all I have for today.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. If you could stop sharing your screen there so I could get back to our people. There we go. Any other questions or comments for Dennis before we move on? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, transportation in the County of Gray, challenges and opportunities. And that's our community transportation manager, Stephanie
Mr.
Stewart.
Chair, I
Steph?
see Buck has his hand up there.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Buck.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps before we get to Stephanie, I can make just a couple of comments about Hanover with respect to transportation, if you would allow.
Sure, go ahead.
So I would just say, for one, Hanover has a very small footprint. So I suppose that we benefit from that because if you're poor and can't afford a car, Hanover might be a good choice because you can walk to many places. Mind you, it gets challenging if you want to pick up a bunch of groceries, and now you have to trek with those groceries. Back home, that could be a challenge. Although I do see people making use of bicycles, and I see them stringing the grocery bags over the handlebars and whatnot, and seem to do quite well. Hanover, by the way, because of our population and the older individuals, makes heavy use of SMART. And I know that when I was on that board for years, we were always the #1 user of SMART services. It may still be that way, although I haven't been on that board for a few years, so I don't know if Hanover is still #1, but if it isn't #1, it's probably #1 or 2. So that's an important piece if we're talking about transportation. That SMART service, well used in Hanover. Also, Launchpad. Really good idea. Launchpad benefits from the county's contribution for the transportation of those young people who live outside of Hanover, so they can participate in the training programs after school at Launchpad and benefit from being able to get a ride home after the training program is finished. And lastly, of course, is that Highway 4 route going east-west from Walkerton through Hanover, Durham, and onwards for connecting to larger centers like Guelph or Orangeville. That's it.
Thank you, Buck. Okay, we'll move on to Stephanie. Steph, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen, so just one moment. So many of you have heard from me before or seen my presentation or our buses, but just in case you haven't, so we are called the GTR, which is known as the Gray Transit Route. And these are our buses. They are bright orange and they are easily identifiable. So everyone's been able to find the bus, and even if they're kind of standing in the wrong spot at a stop, as soon as they see the bus pull up, they know exactly what they should be getting on. So it's been really advantageous to have such a bright, visible bus, and it's been a great service thus far. So the GTR is currently similar to the Ghost, is being funded by a provincial grant and also being funded by Gray County. And we have funding until March 2023 as well. And we began our service in September of 2020, just kind of in the beginning/middle of the start of the pandemic. So the reason that we began service was to respond to the public concerns regarding the lack of transportation options in Gray County, and in addition to that, Bruce County. We provide safe, affordable, and reliable transit for our residents. We offer connections to transit systems within Gray County and beyond. And we connect residents to healthcare, employment, grocery stores, and entertainment when we're able to get them to the entertainment, when it's safe to do so, I should say. We have 6 routes. So we operate between Owen Sound to Dundalk, Dundalk to Orangeville. And when you get to Orangeville, you can connect there to the GO Bus or connect to the Orangeville Transit System and continue on in Orangeville. between Owen Sound and Meaford to Blue Mountains. When you arrive in Blue Mountains, you can connect to the Simcoe Links Transit, the Collingwood Transit, and from there you can connect to Wasaga Beach, to Stainer. You can connect into Barrie, where you can get on the go bus as well. So there's lots of connections in either direction of our service. Owen Sound to Wyerton is our 5th route. And as Dennis said, we connect with Owen Sound Transit. So we've aligned our times so that people can connect to the Owen Sound Transit service, and also so they can connect to the Ghost Bus if they would like as well. The most recent route and the route that is funded by Grey County is the Flesherton to Walkerton route. And that helps people connect to the Route 1 and Route 2. So it allows people to connect to go up to Owen Sound, and it allows people to connect to go down to Orangeville. We've actually had people use the service that go all the way from Walkerton up to Wyerton, or they go Walkerton across to go to Orangeville or Owen Sound. So although it seems far, people are willing to use the service, and they have been using the service to make those connections. So our ridership on routes 1, 3, and 5, so Owen Sound to Dundalk, Owen Sound to Meaford, and then Owen Sound to Wyerton. They're doing pretty good. Obviously, the pandemic has been detrimental to our service. Like all transit services have taken a large impact from this. And what we can see is, so September we just began, and you can see here that people were just beginning to learn about the service. But in October, you can see here that it took off. And so when the service began to take off, this really supported the notion that transit is definitely needed in Grey County and beyond. You can see in November and December that it started to dip down, and that's a direct result of the pandemic and the additional lockdowns. So what we can see is that Dufferin County went into the red zone before we did, and that obviously had a direct impact. And we know that many people are using our service to connect and go beyond. So we are anticipating that, and we can see that our January numbers they're not here, but they are relatively similar to what occurred in December, probably a little bit lower. But what we do know is that they are coming back for February. So that's really, really positive. And we're looking forward to reporting those numbers for February once the month is done. So something that I figured would be of interest to you is the ridership that's specifically located at the Owen Sound Transit Terminal. So these 3 routes start and end at the Owen Sound Transit Terminal. So this goes to show you of the numbers that I previously presented here, of those riders, the majority of them are stopping at the Owen Sound Transit Terminal. So the transit terminal is our #1 most popular destination, start and end point. So of the 77 people that use the service to go between Owen Sound and Meaford, 64 of them got on and off at the Owen Sound Transit Terminal. So one of the benefits of our service is we have really accurate ridership data. I can tell you exactly where people are getting on and where they're getting off the bus. And roughly, I could tell you if they're an adult, a senior, a student, male, female, those kinds of details. And we are having great conversations with the riders. So we are able to kind of learn who they are and why they're riding the bus. And for example, we have someone who lives in Dundalk and travels to Brampton for work, and will call us in the morning at 6:30 in the morning when our phone lines open, and we'll book a ride, and we'll travel from Dundalk to Brampton to work in a long-term care facility. So you can tell that people are definitely using the service. It's the need in Owen Sound specifically is there, and the transit terminal is definitely our #1 hub, and it's been great. So in general, just our Owen Sound ridership. So our most popular stops, when I break down the stops that we have in Owen Sound. So we have the Smart Centers, Owen Sound. So the Walmart stop that Dennis had mentioned, it is a very popular stop. It's our most frequently used. So residents that are living in Meaford or in the town of Blue Mountains are using the bus to come to shop at Walmart and the surrounding areas. The Owen Sound Hospital isn't really being used, but that's not overly surprising because of the pandemic, and just really you're only supposed to be going to the hospital for essential services. So, and most people would likely be using SMART or home and community support services if they need to get to the hospital, or they maybe have a friend or a family member who can drive them. Georgian College, we saw a few people use the bus in October, but really it's not being used. And that is, in my opinion, a direct result of COVID. We anticipated a number of people using our bus to get between Owen Sound and Meaford in the town of Blue Mountains, because that's what Georgian College told us, that they had students that lived in those areas, especially international students who wanted access to a bus. But because school has been mainly virtual for this year, the need is just not simply there. And in speaking to staff at Georgian College, they're actually encouraging students not to loiter on school property and hang out. And they just don't have those fun activities that encourage people to stay on school property longer than needed. So COVID has definitely changed our world. So to talk specifically about our Flesherton to Walkerton route, so this route goes between, starts at the Flesherton Arena, it goes to the Durham Credit Union in West Gray, it goes to the Hanover Library or the municipal office, and it goes to Walkerton on Scott Street there. So in October, we didn't start the service till October, so that's why there is no September data. In October, you can see that we had a few people use it. Again, November was our big spike, and people were really starting to use the service. And then in December, it started to kind of peter off. And January, I believe, if I remember my stats correctly, I think we only had one person use the bus. But in February, we've had people use it almost every week now. So it's interesting to see. I think people just, they made it through the stay-at-home order, and now they're ready to get out and travel again. So we're starting to see those numbers pick up. Something to note specifically about Flesherton to Walkerton is we've made some really great partnerships with the YMCA and Launchpad, to what Selwyn had said. And those partnerships are invaluable. And right now, the YMCA is not offering those programs, and Launchpad has probably just been not doing the same things, again because of COVID. So once the stay-at-home order now it's been lifted and things are starting to kind of go back to some sort of normalcy, we do anticipate those numbers increasing. The YMCA has purchased a number of tickets from us. I just sold a number of tickets to the Canadian Mental Health Association of Grey Bruce. And we will be working with the United Way as well to help individuals who maybe, just don't have access to the internet, or just need a little bit of extra guidance and support with using our transit system. And we are going to work with OW and social services in Grey County. So as much as these numbers aren't overly great, I do see that it will turn around, and that the summer months and the spring, we will see this pick up, and opportunities for employment are going to be a number one opportunity for people to use the bus as well. So Flesherton to Walkerton, I didn't mention before, it runs 2 days a week currently, so Monday and Friday, and the other routes are running 5 days a week, except for Owen Sound to Wyerton is just 3. So the ridership at the Hanover Municipal Office, it's been our most popular stop location as well. So Hanover, again, is kind of the hub for this route. So again, as you can see here, of the 20 people that rode the bus, 19 in November got on at the Hanover Municipal Office. So Hanover residents are definitely using the service, and they do know about it. So thank you to Hanover staff. I know that they've put it up on their website, and they are doing a great job of promoting the service. So there are some pros and cons to conventional transit. So the pros is it's affordable for people. Every single time we tell people what our fares are to use our bus, everyone's like, wow, that's great. I can afford that. I can get a part-time job, and I can afford to use your bus. And get to work and not have transportation eat into my wage that I'm making. So that's been great and really well received. It's reliable. Everybody knows that the bus is going to come. We've only had one day so far where we haven't been able to operate. And that was just this past month when Highway 26 was shut down because of the snow. So we are very reliable. Typically, we can carry a number of passengers on our bus. We did reduce our capacity because of COVID, so we're down to just 5. But if public health advises that we can, we will increase those numbers back up to about 9 or 10. So the opportunities to double in capacity are there, and it supports the environment. Some of the cons, it's a fixed service area. So the bus runs on a specific route and on a specific schedule. And that doesn't always work for everybody. And because we're serving Grey County and parts of Bruce, there's so many people that don't live on those main corridors that just aren't able to get to the service. So that is definitely a barrier to conventional transit. The pandemic has just changed the world of transit, and conventional transit, just again, as you guys had mentioned previously, it lacks the convenience of a personal vehicle. I grew up in Mississauga, and I relied on multiple buses to get to school. When I went to college, it took me 2.5 hours one way and 3 buses to get to school. When I was doing internships and throughout university, I took a walk to the GO bus, and I took the GO bus to the subway to the streetcar, and I did all of that. So there are days that I loved it, and I loved the ability to take a nap or read a book or catch up on schoolwork. But there were days where I really just wanted to be able to get into my car and just drive home, and if it's possible to beat the traffic in Toronto, that was kind of my goal. So that is one thing that I think we will see here in Grey County, is just trying to get people to overcome that convenience and start to see the values of what you gain from public transit. There is the threat of on-demand companies coming into our area, but as much as I say it's a threat, I actually don't see it being a huge threat for us. I think we have so many people to serve and such a large geography that the more services that we have available, the better, because I think people just want to be able to move, and that's our job, is to help people get moving. So I think it's a pro and a con. The other option in the world of transit is on-demand transit. And so some of the pros for that is, like I was saying previously, an increased service area. So there are places out in BC, I believe Baffin Island. What they've done is they have their fixed route system, and then from there they have the on-demand system operating kind of into the more rural places and those off the beaten path roads to help bring people to the big bus. So it also helps with that first mile, last mile. So when you get off the bus now, it will help you get to your home. There's more flexibility and convenience. So you can book a ride when you want to. And that's something that many people like. They like the ability that when our bus would be done running for the evening, if they have a night shift, or they want to go out with a friend or a family member, then they can, and they don't have to rely on using our bus because it stops running at a certain time of night. Provincial legislation is changing to enable this, so that's definitely a pro. And we know that more and more residents that are going to begin to move to Grey County are going to be in favor of this type of platform and technology because they are aware of it. And they are currently using it. And we know in the town of Blue Mountains, they do have Uber/Lyft now because Collingwood has it. So it's coming, and I think that's great. So the cons is it's a heavy reliance on technology. There will be some people that will be left behind just simply based on the fact that it is a technology-driven platform. The health and safety of it, it's expensive. It can be expensive in rural geography. So the typical reason that people jump in an Uber or a Lyft is because you go a short distance and it costs you just a few dollars. And on the flip side of that, that's also the reason that Uber and Lyft works, is because they can create a lot of quick routes and pick up a lot of people in a short amount of time. Whereas here, now you'll be driving a much further distance and between picking up people and dropping people off. To note also, the pandemic has changed that too. So previously, the benefit of on-demand transit was encouraging people to ride share and putting a number of people in a vehicle that didn't know each other and didn't live in the same household. But now that's kind of not possible the same way, and it's just not safe to do that. So that is a barrier currently, but I do believe that that will be alleviated in the future. I was doing some research on Uber to see what's happened to them during this pandemic, and they've seen a huge decrease. It's starting to come back, but actually they've noticed that Uber Eats is doing a lot better because a lot of people are ordering food in. So they found another niche to tap into. So another con would be it's a new type of transit. There's still lots of research to be conducted. So it's fairly new to the market. There are many places around us that are trying it, like Milton is trying it. I believe they've done it as an extension from their Go Bus service. I know Belleville has done it. Some places when the pandemic hit, they took their large vehicles and they flipped them into an on-demand service. So they were able to use those buses and get more people on them because they became a little bit more nimble and flexible. The city of Barrie, just recently, they have a pilot going on, and they took out one of their transit fixed routes, and they have made it more on demand. So there's lots of time to do research, and U of T is doing a lot of research, and I've joined that group to get that research from them. But there's still time, I think, to learn what's happening in the world with it. So what am I doing to promote the service? I've presented to several community groups. I've attended staff meetings to let them know. For example, the YMCA, I attended their staff meeting to explain to them what our transit system was and where our buses stopped and what possible employment opportunities were where our buses stopped. And that has really helped because it really, it gave them more information. I was able to break down the schedule for them and provide that guidance. And we've seen the YMCA definitely use the service more once I explained it. I've presented to a number of councils, and just most recently I did the Grey Bruce Sustainability Network, and I did the Beaver Valley Outreach, Seniors Without Walls. So lots of opportunity to speak to groups, and I take every opportunity to tell people about our service. Before the holidays, I delivered posters to businesses, to communities. I was out and I did all of the routes. Driver's seat came with me, the contractor came with me, and we drove around in our GTR bus so that we were visible and people could see us and they could kind of get what was going on. And the two of us, we went into each business dressed as the county and as GTR, and we talked about the service, and we let convenience stores know. We let real estate agents know and said, when someone new moves here, please tell them about our service. Here's our flyer, and let them know that it exists. So that was really great. And lots of people were, wow, that this is wonderful. Thank you for letting us know. As I said before, I'm working with a number of community groups, so I will continue to work with those agencies, and more groups are starting to get in touch with me, like addiction services and different things like that. So the more I get out there, the more people want to talk to me. So that's great. Some opportunities to increase ridership once the pandemic has kind of calmed itself down. I think there's a great opportunity. So we have some flexibility on our Grey Road 4 route, so between Flesherton and Walkerton, because it is outside of the grant. If there's interest and additional funding that can be found, we can add more stops in Hanover. We are considering adding a stop at the Walmart in Hanover, the P&H Center in Hanover. So, and just different stops in the surrounding area. So making it more, taking our buses and getting more bang for our buck while we're out there. So I think those conversations are going to continue to happen, and I intend on putting a survey out in the near future on our website to allow residents to drop a pin on a map and tell us where they want to see stops. And then I will take that information and I will poll it and put it into a survey and allow people to kind of vote. So they are really going to be driving where the system goes in the future. And then for September 2021 will be our goal to roll out some new stops and kind of revamp it so that people can continue to use it. So one of the challenges of being under a grant is we don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time to sit back and just kind of watch what's going on. So we have to be acting kind of proactive and thinking about the future, because we want to make sure that we take every opportunity to learn what our residents need, so that way this can be a mainstay in our community and give people a fair chance to use the service. I believe another thing to help, especially Grey Road 4, would be increase the days of service. So currently we're operating 2 days a week. So I think if we were to operate 5 or maybe 3, that would help, or even offer a weekend. That creates just some more consistency and more reliability. For many people to leave their vehicle at home and rely solely on a transit system, they need it to be 5 days a week, because that would be how they would say, okay, now I can get to work every day using the bus. I can trust to leave my car at home. But until you get to that kind of level of comfort and confidence, it's kind of hard to convince people to leave their vehicles at home. Work with employers and continue to refine our scheduling. So I'm happy to meet with employers if they want to discuss how we can improve our scheduling. It also comes back down to cost and what makes sense for the greater good of our community. I'm happy to continue to meet with them and find out how we can make our schedule more conducive to their needs. We're beginning to start the conversations about selling physical tickets throughout Grey and Bruce. So for example, in Owen Sound, I've met with Owen Sound staff. So we've discussed about selling tickets at the transit terminal, at the library, and at the city hall. And I've met with the Owen Sound, Georgian Bluff staff, and we're discussing about selling tickets at the Shallow Lake convenience store. So finding places where we know that transit riders are, and making it easy for them to buy a ticket and be able to get on the bus. I think another opportunity is to conduct some more youth outreach and meet with more youth service providers. So getting youth on the bus and getting youth to be able to say, oh, now I can get a job, or hey, I can go visit a friend after school. And having that autonomy, I think, is priceless. Again, like I said, I used the bus as a young person. It was great. I was able to go to the mall with my friends, go to see a movie with my friends, and not need my parents to help me get there and back. And it was great. It was something that I definitely loved, having that freedom. And I think that our youth will definitely be a huge win for us. As we know, youth and children are pretty flexible, and they're willing to try new things. So in discussions with the town of Blue Mountains and the Blue Mountains Village, they said, like, how do we get more youth on these buses to come skiing? So that will be something we'll definitely work to promote once the pandemic is over. And that is all I have. Is there any questions?
I would just make a comment. Like, it's incredible how much work you do, Stephanie. I think that was that was great. My concern is, because of the pandemic, we don't really like, for this particular task force, I'm not sure if you know, either one of these presentations is really benefiting us. Maybe Kim can comment on that. But on the long term, the good news is the funding is here till 2023, and by the time that rolls around, we should have a pretty good handle on you know, what our numbers are and so forth. And I know, you know, you've pointed out 5 or 6 opportunities post pandemic that, you know, you've got a lot of work ahead of you too. So I don't know if Kim, you wanted to comment on that.
I think I look at transit in this context as a support mechanism. I think when we look across all of the challenges and opportunities that we've heard here from an economic and social perspective, what are the deep needs that we're seeing in our communities? What are the challenges they face? And then I would look at transportation as, where does it fit in trying to address either challenges or helping us move things to that next step. And I think then that starts to inform a business case for more investment, or looking for further support from other levels of government. It's just new information, but we know that the federal government has indicated their intent to provide substantial additional funding for transit. It doesn't kick in until 2025, and we don't know exactly what it looks like, but I mean, there are things coming forward in the future that can help us see a little bit of the way forward. But I think it's putting it all in context, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, just something to add to that too. Kim and I, we were recently on a call with MTO, and they had said, I believe there is opportunities for the CT grant funding, which is what we received, to continue in the future. So we're hopeful that we can apply for more funding in 2023. They see, similar to the federal government, that there is a significant need to continue to support us. And in addition to that, we are also part of the Southwest Community Transit Group. So there's a number of us that are advocating and saying that this pandemic has not given us a fair opportunity to get accurate ridership information. So is it possible for you to extend our funding for another year or two to just give us a chance to get some better data before we make a serious decision here? So those conversations are happening. So I believe that's all very positive. And to me, that shows there's opportunities for increased funding in the future.
Okay, any other questions? Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Stephanie, thank you for the presentation. And to echo the chair's comment, you put a tremendous amount of work into this, which is great. Just a question I wanted to ask. I know when Greyhound or any other commercial company was doing these routes, if you could fetch yourself to the side of the road on the route and flag the bus down, they would stop and pick you up. Will our service do that?
Thank you, but no, we aren't allowed to do that. And actually,
under whose rules?
I believe it's MTO, because we are operating as a conventional transit system. So you have to have a fixed route with fixed stops. So I could apply to stop along the highway, and then I could have more stops along the highway, but you can't be kind of hailed that way. I think that's a thing of the past, simply because people probably got hurt. I remember specifically riding Mississauga Transit and saying to the bus driver, can you just drop me off at like this corner? Like it's kind of closer to where I want to get off. And they said, no, unfortunately, we have to drop you off at stops because somebody got hurt when we dropped them off at the wrong stop. So I think those kinds of things have happened, and that's the reason they've gotten away from it. But yes, if we went to an on-demand system, then there's opportunity for people to select where they would want to stop, and you could kind of have more like virtual stops. So that is possible, but just not under the current model that we are in.
And Mr. Chair,
seems like quite a handicap in my mind. I mean,
yeah.
There's no cure for stupid, but I mean, you don't stand on the pavement in the middle of the highway and wave the bus down. You stand on the side of the road. But anyway, all right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, yes, I would. Just one other new piece of information is that we've been informed by the province of their intent to look at making some fairly significant changes to the way that intermunicipal transit functions. They want to remove a lot of some of the barriers that you're speaking to that would facilitate, I think, smaller vehicles and more of a point-to-point type service. They want to get rid of the Ontario Highway Transportation Board and a number of things like that. So we're following those discussions closely too, because a different model might be able to provide a much more affordable and responsive service in our rural context than, big buses trying to move along a fixed place. So maybe there's another way of looking at this if that changes.
Okay, thank you. Paul, go ahead.
So just to follow up with what Brian is saying, currently, if you want to get on one of the sites, you have to sort of pre-book, right? You book ahead. So if it was like, I don't know, the pickup was at 9 o'clock in the morning and 8:30, you thought, I want to use that. what's the turnaround time? How soon do you have to book in order to get on that bus for them to know that you're going to be on that bus? Is it a day, an hour, 2 days? Like, what's the turnaround time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just minutes, really.
Okay.
You just need to be at the stop, and we know this is new for many people, so we are being very flexible. If somebody is at the stop and they haven't booked a seat and our bus is not full, then we just let them on and we educate them and we say, hey, this is how the service works. And some people have stood there with cash and said, hey, I want to get on the bus. And then we say, you know what? Actually, that's not how the service works. So, but get on the bus. We'll take you to where you want to go, and we'll just educate you, because that education piece is so much more valuable than turning someone away. And that is not our goal at all. We will never leave someone behind. And so that individual that I was mentioning about that lives in Dundalk and goes to Brampton, she calls the morning of and says, I'm walking to the bus stop right now. I don't have time to book my own ride. Can you do it for me? And we have staff that are working between, I believe, 6:30 a.m. and 9 o'clock at night, Monday to Friday. And then I believe it's 6:30 to like 8:30 on the weekends. Like it's quite extensive, the phone lines that we have and how often people can call in. And they are there to help at any moment and help book rides for people. So we've made sure that technology is not going to be the barrier. You just need to call.
Well, it's
Okay.
encouraging that there's some flexibility that allows maybe some, as Brian, maybe some changes that will adapt to sort of that hybrid, that if you need a ride, there's ways of maybe catching that ride. Thank you. Thank you,
That
Mr.
was a
Chair.
great example of good service right there. People, answering phones between 6:30 a.m. and 9:30. That's pretty good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks again, Stephanie. Great presentation. We'll move on here. Is there any other business? Seeing none, our next meeting is on the 19th of March. We need a mover and a groover to adjourn. Brian is moving and Buck will second that, and we'll call the question. Are there anyone opposed?
Go Leafs, go.
Great. Okay, meeting adjourned. Have a good day, everyone, and have a great weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Hey, Matthew.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Matthew, maybe